you've spoken a lot about this being, it's like a delivery infrastructure, if I could kind of coin it, that this AI SDLC is much more about not just these steps anymore, but what's connected and what's traceable and how does that impact across the end to end? What's new and different there that is essential in these AI SDLCs versus what you said, where individuals are just using tools along the way and getting some merit of result?
Yeah. Okay, so let's look under the hood of HTEC's SDLC approach, which, as I said, is team oriented. There's a lot more to it, as you well know, Sava. So what we'll see. Let's start with what an individual developer might do. They might end up in a chatbot or have a tool integrated into an IDE, write some code, have some conversations. The amount of input that they're giving is the AI model is relatively small, and it's kind of throwaway. People aren't necessarily tracking it and keeping track of it. It's just sort of like, let's just keep going until it's done. In a more organized approach, essentially, you've got to have the clarity, as I've mentioned a few times now, is really embodied in a set of documents that can be, markdown documents that are always available to the AI. The AI is also being controlled in terms of how much rope you give it, how many steps are we going to take down the road. If there's a bit of a structure to it, you can actually get more reliable output from the AI. So, for example, you just go through a planning phase, and then you go through various steps. And there's a bit of a controlled process for producing the project, and you don't get the full product until the end. And that the reason for that is that you can validate, how well the system is functioning along the way. And if something went wrong or more clarity is needed, you can essentially back up. So this is akin to, in software development, just checkpointing things and rolling back when there's mistakes. And so essentially a version of that works on the level of human language. That human language is all capturing the utterances of the team about their areas of expertise and their goals for the project. Those are the things that we are capturing, refining, preserving, and using to help the AI take the next step. And so that process is, when you hear HTEC talk about the process, it's very team oriented, but it's relying heavily on AI. So we're able to produce very complex projects much, much faster than we would have without lengthy discovery phases.
That's really interesting about what you're mentioning on capturing. So Claude Code is the buzz as of when it was released months ago. And people now are kind of capturing these skills. They're saying like, okay, our engineers now are 10x and they could do this much better. And they're like, now with Claude Code, we could do everything. Or insert your coding LLM here. Why is that? Why is that effective, and why is it also a trap? Why is that? It's a big buzz and it empowers a lot. But how does that fit into this process, and why is that a trap? Potentially.
Well, there's been tremendous excitement about AI, and honestly, it's found a lot of hype, right? And so everybody in the world is interested in the business world is interested in AI. And, the levels of expertise vary a lot. And there's a lot of noise in the system as a result of that. So I think I share the excitement, but the hype is actually a negative, I think, in terms of helping us figure out the right next move. What's going on is a situation where the tools are useful. I lost my train of thought there.
So basically, it's what's happening with what's the trap of these tools like Claude Code, and there's a capturing aspect in there. You can capture skills, you can capture all these things in there. But what's also the trap? Why is it giving a false sense of security in some enterprises or organizations that say like, look, we can now do this all ourselves?
I don't know if there's a trap, but I think there's still a journey that everybody's on in terms of learning how to use the tools and what tools will be the best. So, for example, Claude Code, very popular today, but there are other tools out there, and that's always been a bit of a horse race. Maybe that horse race continues. It's March 26, 2026. In 6 months, maybe there's another model that's a bit more popular. I think we should be thinking about this as from a higher level and figuring out how to use whatever tool is the best. And there may be specialties at some point. So we should not be getting overly wedded to a particular platform or a particular model. We should have some flexibility because things will continue to change. And I think the trap that some people fall into mainly because of the hype is that they think they can just say, give me a system that does X. X is a very short sentence, and they're expecting enter to hit enter and get a system out. I don't think it's quite that simple. And so that's why we have a more elaborated SDLC to make sure that we're extracting value from the AI without becoming, so dependent on it. We lose the capability to think for ourselves.
That's interesting. So moving into kind of, the traditional enterprise software model, is that, how much of that is at risk? So there's been a lot of talk of SaaS busting, and people are kind of like creating their own kind of custom software. And now you have a new process that is very different from the traditional legacy software development lifecycle, which took many, many kind of years, not years, but a much longer time. And so what's at risk now on these enterprise models? How are they changing? Is it just new value? Is it just speed? Is it something else that's happening in how they're thinking about kind of enterprise software and delivering?
Yeah, I mean, we're entering a world, or maybe we're already well into a world where buy versus build is sort of back in vogue in terms of a decision to think about. We have, I don't want to comment on SaaS companies and business models and things like that. Essentially, that may evolve, and what SaaS companies do will evolve, and the marketplace will evolve. But I think we'll always be in a world where people are using enterprise software. We're entering a world where that software can be better and better. And who's writing that software, who's paying for it, and who's building it, that could change a little bit. There's a lot more opportunity, I think, for companies to think about gaps in vendor products and actually be able to perfect the software that they're using without having to worry too much about what SaaS companies do, which is to amortize development costs across a large customer base. The costs of developing enterprise software are, in a way, dropping dramatically. And so that you can think about if my software stack was perfect, what would it look like? This is not a crazy pie in the sky idea anymore. It's actually a reality. And many of our clients are doing exactly that.
So when you're thinking about that, then what is the when they're operationalizing AI into their enterprises, is this something that is a competitive asset, or is it just you have to do it to stay with the market? Like, is there a differentiator that's possible?
Kind of a deep question, Sava. I think that everything that looks like a competitive advantage that's come along in my lifetime has become table stakes at one point or another. And so you can have an edge in terms of how you build things or what you're building. And, that may well be a real edge at some point. And then later on, everybody has caught up and, the game has changed a bit. So I think it's just, as professionals thinking about software development, it's incumbent on us to keep up and do things in the best way possible and think deeply about what is the right way to build things. And that, whether it's a competitive edge or table stakes, we'll still be in the game. And that'll be good.